Welcome back to another episode of the Chill Film Discussions. Wow, we've been gone for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, who knows, but welcome back. Um, and I'm so glad that you guys have been waiting so patiently for us. But yeah, anyway, so today we kind of discussed Train to Busan. It's a 2016 action horror South Korean film that, according to Wikipedia, but is it horror? That's the big question. I mean, there are definitely horror elements to it, but I would classify it more as a thriller personally. And but yeah, I think overall this movie sort of details this, father who is trying to protect his daughter as a zombie apocalypse unfolds in Seoul and on his train to be trained to Busan from Seoul. So I think this movie was a very good movie. One of the definitely better zombie movies I have seen. Mainly because I think it was very character driven. There was, kind of felt for the main character and his sort of internal transformation from being selfish to selfless, and saving his daughter and pregnant lady at the end, or saving others in general, or being mindful of others in general. And it's very nice to sort of see a very a character driven movie with zombies, because of course zombies themselves weren't the first and foremost, nor was the horror in my opinion. It was just more so like zombies. It just happened during the zombie apocalypse. That's what sort of preempted this whole transformation, and it was nice to sort of see that journey.
Right.
I think overall, this film's characters were pretty endearing. It was well acted, and I think there was some good banter, good dialogue, and even good just characterization in general of of not only the protagonist but also the side characters, and I guess you can say the antagonist of this film, which I call the business executive dude, who was very selfish and ended up killing basically half of the kind of the main cast through his actions. But anyway, yeah, I think it was well. I think it was well. It was well. The plot itself was well organized and compact. It made sense, and for the most part, I wasn't really there were only a couple. There were moments in this movie where it kind of took me out of the moment, just because
Right.
there were certain things that happened where I was like, huh, or, how is this physically possible, or how did this happen, but for instance, I would say there's the physical moments where you're running. There's literally a pregnant lady running as fast as you can from this horde of zombies that are sprinting as fast as they can, and it seems like they're very fast, but somehow they can't catch up to this pregnant lady who's also apparently running Mach speeds in front of them. I don't know. There's also parts where they're climbing on top of the train, in the train cart, and trying to crawl above the zombies' luggage rack above, and somehow a pregnant lady was able to fit and climb up, and an elder lady was able to climb up without making the noise. Anyway, yeah, and then I think something about transformation times in this movie, in terms of you becoming a zombie, also was they're somewhat inconsistent, and there was never really an explanation for that. Although kind of makes sense given the fact that the zombie outbreak was very new. But some characters transformed very quickly, and some characters had to definitely had their 2 or 3 minutes of fame while they're able to throw in their monologue before they transform. So fairly interesting. But yeah, I think overall very solid movie. Just some parts where I just got thrown taken aback and put out of the moment. And also I unfortunately I think this movie for me personally suffered through it being overhyped. I just felt there are a lot of people who said that this movie was very good, very great, had rave reviews for it, but and so I had really high expectations going to this film, and I think there was small inconsistencies. There was small moments where I was taken out of the film, kind of didn't, maybe not reach those expectations. But otherwise, I mean, it's still a good film, but just like, I don't know,
Right.
very high expectations going in, and yeah, it, I don't know if it met them or not, but still a solid film. Anyway, Mr. Austin, go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, Train to Busan. I think for me, I don't usually go for horror movies, even if it's like labeled like horror. I wouldn't go for it. But I think, as we've discussed before, it felt less of a horror. I mean, yes, they had those imagery like zombies, death, right? A lot of gore, right? But this movie kind of didn't really have any jump scares, right? So I was able to, I think, enjoy this movie a lot more than I thought I would. Action thriller is a very, I think, accurate description of it, right? It follows a lot of the character plots instead of focusing on like the supernatural. I mean, it's there. We don't really get to explain why. It's introduced as a setting, but it's not the main focus, right? The main focus is how these characters interact and how they go and survive, right? But with this film, I enjoy the story. It's very simple, right? How to survive this apocalypse? How does the main character go and kind of reconcile the different viewpoints that he has with his daughter? How to become more selfless, right? Because he's selfish at first, and now he becomes a selfless man who sacrifices himself. It's a very beautiful at the end where he cries for his daughter. It's kind of funny. I thought he was going to say "I love you" to his daughter. I don't think he ever says that. He just says, "Yeah, stay here with his daughter," and then he goes off. It's like, well, you should have at least have more emotion, right? I feel like you're ending and whatnot, trying to impart some final words, but he doesn't. He just stays with her and then goes off. And I think it was a very. I like the imagery of just it was the shadow of the train, just him falling off. I thought that was really well done.
That was very well done.
Really like that scene, right? But yeah, it's really focused on his journey, and I really enjoy that. A lot of good action scenes, especially from them trying to fight through the train and whatnot. Right, very well done, especially the big body builder kind of guy just punching everybody.
Yeah.
He's a lot of physicality there.
Movie.
Exactly. It was very very well done. He's also a very good actor. Enjoyed his performance, but yeah, I think there's like a few things. Maybe this movie's supernatural, and you have it's also based on when civilization breaks down, how do people react? Some people react selfishly, understandable. Other people react selflessly, try to work as a team. The bad the bad kind of gets emphasized. The good is emphasized, right? And that's shown here, right? But then you kind of question what people's reactions are, why they made the decisions that they do. It doesn't really make too much sense. I think what you said before. Previously, like, hey, this is not about the decisions making, right? But like when they go to one of the train stops and nobody's there, right? You're right. It's very convenient, right? And then everyone's at all the zombies are at the end of the platform, and then they get attacked. But even then, other decision making, I think, really got questioned to me is when they the survivors come back. And then they say, oh yeah, he's infected, but you can kind of see that he's not, right? And then there's no way to verify or check. Like, did you get bit? Did you is there anything happening, or kind of some kind of observation? Because these people are definitely already pretty fine, and now you kind of say, oh yeah, they're accused. Like they marshal them through the whole train, and it's like, well, they didn't they didn't turn, or they seem fine, right? So I feel like there's no logic there. It's they obviously want to play up the fear and exile, so this way they can have the other sister open up the train and massacre most of the other past survivors. But at that point, I was like, well, you can kind of see like none of them turned. Usually it's a quick turn until later we find out like maybe the one guy is not a quick turn, but usually it's a quick turn and they all seem fine. So I don't know. I feel like there was no rationality there, and I guess in this time you don't have it. But at the same time, when you're watching this movie, you just think. No one cared to ask. No one cared to apply logic, especially if you have other survivors in a world where there's not many humans. You're going to exile, branch off. I didn't think that made too much sense, but again, I don't know if it's a nitpick because it bothered me a little bit when that happened. But other times, and obviously they're. I mean, before that point, I can understand why they're afraid, right? Yeah, they could have gotten bitten, but once they were inside the cabin, it's like, well, they're fine, right? Nothing happened. So. And then, you pointed out a few things, inconsistencies. I think, the logic of how people turned, like how quickly. I think that was the other thing that kind of bothered me. So sometimes it seemed very quickly throughout most of the film until like you have some exceptions here and there, which were not even shown to other people. Like if you have maybe a scene where somebody was bit or something, and if they gradually turned, then that fear could have been justified, but that wasn't really happening at all. So I think the passengers' fear of them, the survivors, I don't think was too rational. But throughout the film, I think you called the business executive, the selfish one, an antagonist. I don't know if I called him an antagonist, just someone who kind of sets off other elements, right? Because he doesn't really oppose anybody. He's just there to set off chains of reaction. But he's definitely a bad guy, right? He's not there. I mean, I guess, yeah.
He's the embodiment. He's the embodiment of the internal struggle, physical embodiment of the internal struggle that our main character is going through.
That's true. I guess you can say that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that the zombies are the main big bad here. But he played a more played more of a part of it at the end, right? And I don't know. And I guess he does turn the main character, and then he kills a bunch of people. So he's definitely not a good guy. I guess. Yeah, I guess he could be classified as the antagonist. But again, with his character, I didn't like he. I mean, obviously he's a good character, and I didn't like him, just like how selfishly he acted. Right, he killed the young couple. Mm-hmm. I was really sad about that. I was just like, I mean, with the young couple, they were a side characters. I mean, their relationship developed because I thought first the young athlete didn't like her, but then they seemed to get together at the end. It was nice and touching, and then. It was kind of ended pretty quickly, and I didn't like that. I mean, like that in terms of like what happened in the story. Obviously, it was overall it didn't affect too much like how I enjoyed the story, but I just didn't like the situation that happened to them. And then he also killed the conductor, which was kind of sad because the conductor helped a lot. At least was very professional in terms of how he did things.
Yeah,
he was very. Yeah. But that young businessman, embodiment, as you said, of like I guess the business corporate side and greed and whatnot, just thinking of yourself. And how it didn't really help him at the end, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think I did enjoy this movie, watching it, even if it was kind of horror. But the character focus, action scenes, really, and the good story structure, I think kind of sold me when I was watching it.
For sure, yeah. All right, do our final ratings and then call it a stream. So I guess my final rating for this movie would be an 8. I think, yes, I would recommend it. Like I said, it was like a solid plot, very character-driven, very organized, well-acted, compact. But I think it just kind of suffered. I mean, personally, it kind of suffered through like very high expectation syndrome where it didn't meet those high expectations. And the reason for that was because I just felt like there were some parts where I was taken out of the moment. Either not decisions being made, just like things occurring that were inconsistent throughout the film, and then maybe some questionable decisions from some characters. But the characters themselves were also pretty smart. Yeah, they were intelligent too, so it was nice to see that. But yeah. I think overall, a very solid movie, and I would recommend watching it, especially if you like the whole like zombie trope for sure. But
yeah, zombie. Good zombie. Then not that I've watched many.
Yeah, so that's my rating.
So you said 8.
Yes, sir.
Okay. For me, I'd say 7.5. I think. I mean, I enjoyed this movie. I mean, but there are some points where I feel like. The characters, I mean, good character arcs, good character stories, but sometimes I just felt a question like why some people in society did the things that they do. It's probably more. That's probably more a characteristic of the genre, right? People don't act rationally, and people do things to set the story off, make it more convenient, right? I don't think I enjoy that, but overall, on the macro level, good story, good characters, good character arc, especially following the MC. Some of the side characters, not too important, but everyone played a part. Everyone played a role. You kind of root for them, right? You want them to survive, right? I remember watching it. There's a point where it's all quiet. It's just the survivors, and they're all like, "Oh, hopefully this group survives," but they don't, right? The group is whittled down even more, and then you have this tragic end at the end. At the end, which works. But yeah, I mean, it's a good story, but so I think some story choices were just too convenient. But would I recommend this movie? I think it was a 7. 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 I think Yeah, I guess I say yeah. I'd recommend it. It's a good movie to watch. Like, but I would kind of give it caveat. It is more like a zombie movie. Is it horror? No. But I think it would still turn people away just with that. It turned me away until we finally decided to watch this stream, Patrick, before our stream. But yeah, I would recommend
Yeah.
it with a caveat. So,
All right. Cool. Well, that's it for today. We will be back next week.
Yeah, I can do it.
All right, you too. That sounds good. We'll be back again next week with a movie that we will determine off stream after this stream. But we'll update the schedule accordingly. And then, yeah, that's it. Catch you guys next time.
Bye.